Tube is awake here. That's what always wakes up last. Let's see if the internet has given us another day. Here it goes. Here it goes. We're doing it one more time. How about that? How about that? One more time. Oh, what's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good morrow, good happening. Whatever is going on where you're at, I hope it is awesome. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying home. I hope you're staying in tune with the straight and narrow, as the Who would say. It is Thursday, May 14th, in this quarantined year of our Lord, 2020. My hair is everywhere. It's all over the place. I'm talking into a foam ball. The cat's going nuts. Lucy, my cat, is in fantastic shape because of all the exercise she's getting during this quarantine. And I'm just kind of rolling with it. Guys, we have a guest today that I am very, very excited about. She is running against Susan Collins for the Senate over in Maine. And Susan Collins, of course, is considered a moderate Republican, which is also known as compassionate fascist. And this woman is running against her in the Green Party, and ranked choice voting is part of that campaign. She's also an activist and a teacher and an educator. So please welcome to the show, Lisa Savage, also known as Lisa for Maine. Lisa, how are you?
I'm very well, Ron. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on the show today. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
So, well, let's start a little bit about you before we get into the issue. So, what do you teach?
Well, I've been a reading interventionist for the last several years, so working with young learners. Before that, I was a literacy coach in my district, so that's more of a professional development job supporting teachers. And before that, I taught high school social studies for quite a while.
So the reading instruction. So you taught high school, but how young did you go as far as like the reading instruction? Was that elementary school or was that middle school or?
Yeah, kindergarten is the youngest.
Oh wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So you're a very patient person.
I may have used it all up by now. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's difficult, but it's so important. I mean, it's got to be kind of a rush too, because, you know, when kids are in kindergarten, their brain is just kind of a sponge, and you're teaching them fundamentals of reading, which of course they're going to use for the rest of their lives.
It's true. They always, they love you. They hug you. They're happy when you come to their room to get them. They also sneeze on you and all your materials constantly.
Oh, so boy.
There's upsides and downsides to every age group, but I'm just a person that's really interested in learning. I'm a lifelong learner myself. I love the learning process, and especially I'm fascinated when there are barriers to learning. So it's been a great job for me. I'm retiring right now. It's the end of a 25-year career teaching. So it's been a good one.
So you thought, you know what, it's time for me to retire. I've taught for a lot of years. That's a stressful gig. I should probably do something way less stressful. I know, politics. That's
perfect, right? Well, actually, I had planned to retire at the end of next year because I helped write a federal grant, a school improvement grant, and the grant went to the end of next school year. So I had said I'll retire then. But this summer, I was on the beach in southern Maine, and I got a phone call, and this friendly person said, "Hey, Lisa, it's ranked choice voting in your Senate election. Susan Collins is plummeting in the polls. Wouldn't you like to run for senator?" And it was the last thing I was thinking about. I have held elected office before, but I was a union vice president and chief negotiator for several years in the district that I worked in before this one. I wasn't planning to go into electoral politics, but I do kind of come from a family that does that. My father was running for the Maine House when he died suddenly in 1988. And his father, my grandfather, was high school classmates with Margaret Chase Smith, and they remained friends for life. And because both went into politics, my grandfather served in the Maine House and Senate. And I've met Senator Smith. And so on that side of my family, the Savage side of my family, it's kind of a normal thing to go into public service. And, I'm very, very worried about the families of the students that I've been working with for 25 years. I live in the 2nd district in Maine. It's the poor part of Maine up north. And people have been, long before the pandemic, were barely making it. The economy was designed for them to fail. They'd have 2 or 3 jobs that barely made the bills. And one little accident, mistake, illness was enough to completely, destroy their arrangements. And then now that with the pandemic, I know hunger has grown immensely. The lack of leadership at the federal level has just been stupefying, really. So
it's been mind blowing. I mean, it's been, we are a
has.
straight up banana republic. It's unreal. They just said, "Hey, banks, here's trillion. We're going to go on vacation." So are you a lifelong Mainer then?
Yes, I was born in Maine. I went to Bowdoin College here in Maine. And then when I became a teacher, I got a master's degree in education from the University of Southern Maine. And I've lived here since 1988, brought my own kids up here. But my mother was from California. So I actually grew up in California. After kindergarten, we moved there, and I lived in California through high school and then came back to Maine.
Okay. When's the best time of the year to go to Maine?
Well, probably the fall, when the leaves are
All right.
turning pretty colors and it's still warm.
All right. Well, if it's impossible to predict how the year is going to look, but if we are back to some amount of normalcy by the fall, I'm supposed to be there in September. So I'm hoping that still happens, because it'll be my first time. I've never been to Maine.
Oh, it's beautiful. September's a good time too. Still can get out on the water in a canoe and,
My fingers are crossed. I'm really hoping it still happens. If not, we'll, reschedule it for a nice time too. But yeah, I'm hoping to get there. Never been to Maine before. It's one of the states on my list. All right. So let's get into some of the stuff that's going on in Maine. One of those big things being Maine is really leading the way nationwide on ranked choice voting. And your election is going to be ranked choice voting. Now, for anyone not familiar with that, what ranked choice voting is you get to rank your choices. So let's say the green is your first choice. You put the green first. Let's say your second choice is a Democrat or a Libertarian or whoever. You put them second, third, fourth, and so on. And so when they tally the votes, if your first choice doesn't reach a certain plurality, it just diverts to your second choice. And they do that with all the votes until a plurality is reached and a winner is declared. Here in California, Gavin Newsom tells us that that's somehow too complicated for our small voter brains. We can't possibly handle this. Our elections are so simple right now, what with gerrymandering and the Electoral College. It's so simple. Why complicate this very simple system that we have? But ranked choice voting is actually quite simple. And it's infinitely better because it eliminates that whole quote unquote spoiler effect that they use to shame voters. With ranked choice voting, you can vote for the candidate that you feel is the strongest candidate. You don't need to worry about quote unquote spoiling an election for a candidate that I guess was just entitled to your vote. That's what we're taught. So you are on the front lines of the ranked choice voting battle in Maine. So give people a little bit of the backstory, because I know the cliff notes of it, but I'm sure you can, go into way more detail, because my understanding of it is the establishment has really fought Maine having ranked choice voting, but it seems to be that the voters really freaking like it.
Well, the two corporate parties, of course, are threatened by it because it gives more voice and more choice to voters. It is a really new system that we're just grappling with. They've had it in Australia since 1947 and in Ireland since, I think, 1922. But yeah, it's brand new. We hardly know how it works. Ranked choice voting is just like you described. If there are 4 people on the ballot, I rank one first, second, third, fourth. I don't have to make a fourth choice. I don't have to make a second choice. I can just pick one person. But if one of the candidates reaches over 50% of the votes in the first count, then game over, they win the election, just like, before ranked choice voting. However, if they don't, no one reaches 50%, they look down at who got the fewest votes. They cross that name off the list. They look at, okay, the people that picked that candidate first, who did they pick second? And they transfer those second choice votes to the other candidates. And they keep doing that until someone has more than 50%. Now, this has already unseated a very unpopular Republican incumbent in the 2nd District of Maine, where I live. Bruce Poliquin was the Republican who represented us in the House. And in 2018, he ran. Two independents ran, and a Democrat named Jared Golden, who had been in the Maine legislature for a while, but wasn't super well known at the time. And lo and behold, the independents pulled enough of the votes that no one got a majority. So they did two more rounds. They struck not only the fourth, but the third place names off the list. And most all of the votes went to Jared Golden, because if you think about my case, for instance, someone who ranks me first is very unlikely to rank Susan Collins second, because we couldn't be more apart in our values and our platform. Someone who ranks the Democrat first, whoever the Democrat is, the primary hasn't happened yet, is unlikely to rank Susan Collins second. Right. So the presence of a strong progressive in the race brings out voters. Exit polls have indicated that when asked, why did you vote for Lisa Savage? People in those type of elections will say, I wouldn't have come out to vote if there hadn't been a strong candidate, very progressive candidate, because I wouldn't have given my vote to either of the two corporate parties. So it increases our chances of unseating Susan Collins, besides the fact that she's wildly unpopular. And I don't think her vote last night to let the government spy on our browser searches without a warrant is going to endear her anymore to the very independent, libertarian-leaning voters in Maine, certainly. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, that was a pretty disappointing thing that happened, to say the very least. So you were describing to me off mic some of the reactions that you've gotten, back before this pandemic happened, and you could approach people and go door to door. So can you kind of unpack how that's been for you?
Sure. If I was on the street in Portland and a couple walked by, a man and woman, and I say my line, hi, I'm Lisa Savage. I'm running for the U.S. Senate against Susan Collins under ranked choice voting. At the word Susan Collins, the woman whips right around. The man may keep walking. She stops in her tracks and looks at me.
So why is that?
Well, Susan Collins used to be viewed as a pretty moderate Republican. Mm-hmm. And for years, she could be counted on to vote to uphold women's reproductive health rights, and also often voted the way we would want her to on children's issues, education, children's health, women's health, that type of thing. So even if her foreign policy wasn't what many voters in Maine liked, they did like the fact that they could count on her to be a vote for women. And that isn't true anymore. Ever since the demagogue with bad hair came into the White House, she has towed the party line lockstep. And so most people would cite her support for Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court as being the turning point where they said, that's it, I'm done with Susan Collins. Interestingly, I had a Zoom house party with some retired postal workers the other day, and they've been mad at Susan Collins since 2006 because she sponsored the bill that undercut the financial stability of the U.S. Postal Service by requiring them to fund their pension fund out 75 years, which no business does, no entity does. So, people that have been paying more attention all along, I've never voted for Susan Collins, but there are a lot of moderate Democrats in Maine that have voted for Susan Collins. Then the really bad tax bill, the GOP tax bill that, took from the poor and gave more to the rich, very unpopular here in Maine. And then the impeachment debacle was also not good for her ratings. So I believe the last time I saw, she's the most unpopular senator in the United States, even beating out Mitch McConnell, which is an
wow. Yeah, that is quite an accomplishment. Wow. Okay. So, how responsive, how has ranked choice voting kind of played into this when you're, approaching people? Or would you say that Maine, and I know Maine's a fairly progressive state as is, but would you say that the kind of openness towards the Green Party has increased because now people know, we have ranked choice voting, so I can just vote for the candidate I like the best. I don't have to worry about, if I don't vote for the Democrat, the Republican gets in, or vice versa. Have you seen that?
I've seen some of that, but I think mostly we're all still learning. to not just accept the false dichotomy. And, paradigm shift is hard for people. So
Sure.
we've had this false dichotomy election system for most our lifetime, and it's hard for people to make that turn. Of course, the Green Party in Maine worked hard for ranked choice voting, as did many other people. We had 2 referendums where we passed ranked choice voting, but you can't legislate by referendum. So the Maine legislature still had to enact the law. And after the second time they did, I would say some people in Maine are well versed in ranked choice voting, may have even worked hard on it. Our ballot access coordinator had worked on ranked choice voting. But one of the things about our campaign early on is I first tried to get ballot access as a Green. I was a registered Green. And the rules for that were you could start January 1st. So we started like at midnight, on New Year's Eve, until March 15th. You had to collect 2,000 signatures from registered Greens. And there are 43,000 people that say they're registered Greens. But Maine is a big state, and January 1 to March 15th is ice storm season. So it was very challenging. We only had gathered about 900 signatures in 900 hours of both volunteer and paid signature gathering. And as we were coming up to March, the ballot access coordinator said, I don't think we're going to make it as Greens. So the pivot would be you unenroll, Lisa, as a Green. We apply for ballot access as an unenrolled or independent candidate. You're going to have to get twice as many signatures, 4,000 instead of 2,000. But we have until June 1st to do it. And more to the point, we can stand outside the polls on Super Tuesday and get them all in one day. And the rest of us on the team were like, we're not getting them all in one day. He said, I bet we can. And by gosh, we got over 9,000 signatures in one day on Super Tuesday. So we were in the Bangor Daily News. The Secretary of State of Maine admitted, yes, access for a third-party candidate is extremely difficult, almost to the point of impossible. In the state.
Especially now.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So as far as, like, I know I was looking at the Green Party website and learning more about you, and it looks like there are more Greens running in Maine than almost any other state. I mean, I didn't do the tally state by state, but there's a huge presence of Greens in Maine. Is that a result of ranked choice voting, or is it because there was a lot of Green Party to begin with, or is it a little bit of both? I mean, why is there that trend?
It's not because of ranked choice voting, although that will probably help more of them get elected. As I mentioned, there are 43,000 registered Greens in Maine. Maine only has, 1 million and not quite a half people. So even though 43,000 isn't a big number in your state, it's a pretty big number in Maine. The Green Party has been strong in the state legislature. Lots of Greens are on the school boards in there, our school board directors. So there's a long tradition of seeking elected office as Greens. And I don't think it's the result of ranked choice voting. It probably, the reverse is probably true, because the Green Party has been strong for a lot of years. Ranked choice voting did get passed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why do you think that is then? Then looking like big picture, why do you think Maine has connected with a green message, so much?
Well, Maine is vacation land, and that is because we still have lots of clean water and beautiful trees and lots of, big forested areas that have not been turned to industrial purposes. Most Mainers live with a lot of room around us. We are independent. We are nice to each other. We can respect someone. You don't have to have the same politics as someone that lives down the road from you. You can still be neighbors and, borrow each other's thing or take care of the cat when you're on vacation. Maine has a strong tradition of electing independents. Our other senator, Senator Angus King, is an independent. He was governor of the state for 2 terms as an independent. So it's not unusual in Maine for people to switch parties, either to change their registration. Maybe they want to vote in a primary, or it's a very independent electorate, and we all have grown up around nature and the beauty of an unspoiled place, and we value it, we treasure it. Almost everybody has good memories of, going out to their grandparents or uncle and aunt's little cabin on a lake somewhere. It's not fancy at all, but that's what you do in the summertime. So I think the green values of protecting our natural resources are here, and the Green Party values of respecting other people, not just tolerating, but welcoming diversity and saying, hey, if someone's not bothering me, or why would I bother them? It's a sort of a live and let live kind of state. There are exceptions, of course, and Portland is very artsy, metropolitan, small city, for a city, but compared to Los Angeles, it's minuscule, but it's very culturally alive. There's another thing about Maine is that it's been a sanctuary, or rather a asylum state for refugees seeking political asylum for many years. And so we have had successive waves of new Mainers who come from usually conflict areas, could be Central America, could be Africa. And that also makes us more, I think, open-minded, interested in hearing from other people and learning about their culture. I think the public schools in Portland have, many, many, many languages spoken. Another thing that's unique about Maine, and that may very well underpin some of what our greenness is, that, the tribes of Maine, the native people, have maintained their own territorial integrity. Of course, it shrunk considerably, but they were sort of the first colonized and the first to encounter European culture. And at the same time, they held on to at least a portion of their traditional hunting and fishing grounds. And I think that is a sort of an anchor for us here in Maine. I wish my ancestors, who prospered by stealing indigenous land and selling ice for profit, I wish that they had listened more to the wisdom of those indigenous elders who knew how to live sustainably. They had been here at least 12,000 years before Europeans came. If we would listen to the indigenous elders' wisdom, we might not be in the mess we're in today with the climate crisis. And that wisdom is still here. There's still a big place in Maine where that wisdom is held.
So for anyone just tuning in, we are talking to Lisa Savage, Lisa for Maine. She is running for Senate against Susan Collins up in Maine. And if you have any questions for her, please do super chat them. We'll get to some of those at the end. So what are your top 3 issues? If you had to just pick 3, what are the main 3 issues that would be top priority for you should you be elected to the Senate in November?
Medicare for all, expanded single-payer universal health care for every resident of the U.S. It always was on my platform. It wasn't number 1, it was number 2. But in these times, we have seen how critical it is to have good health care for everyone, and some national leadership on health care, where there's a policy of caring for everyone, making sure that people get what they need, because it's the public health. It's not individuals pitted against individuals, or saying, oh, you're in poverty, you don't have a job, you're unemployed, so therefore you don't deserve health care. That is ridiculous, and it's a disaster when it comes to a public health crisis. A Green New Deal, a demilitarized Green New Deal. Our biggest employer in Maine is General Dynamics Bath Iron Works Shipyard. They build warships for the Navy. I've been part of a campaign for many years before becoming a candidate to call on that facility to convert to building something we need. And, the Pentagon is the biggest polluter on the planet. It consumes more greenhouse gas than 140 nations, or consumes more fossil fuels than 140 nations if it was listed as a nation. So anytime you're building weapon systems, that's harming the climate. That's really, militarism really drives climate change. And if you stop doing that, that's a win for the climate. And then if you instead build something that addresses energy needs, public transportation, that is also a win for the climate. And it needs to be a just transition. I don't want to throw anybody out of work. I want everybody who wants one to have a good union job with benefits. One of the things we're always told by our congressional reps is, oh, well, we can't stop the Navy contracts at Bath Iron Works because jobs. Well, really, building weapon systems is a bad jobs program in terms of how many jobs it generates. Economist research demonstrates time and again that if you invested the same, say, $1 billion in almost any other sector of the economy, including clean energy production, you would produce at least 50% more jobs, sometimes more than that. So a demilitarized Green New Deal that also includes local energy production, consumer-owned utilities that where the power is generated locally and used locally, you're losing tons of electric energy by transmitting it thousands of miles over these big lines in order to sell that at a profit. But that's not at all an efficient use of that energy. And, consumers make better choices about what's in their best interest. They don't think what's in Goldman Sachs' best interest. They think what's in
our best
mine and my
interest?
neighbor's best interest. And then third, I think that the student debt crisis is really bad everywhere, but it's particularly bad in Maine. Maine students hold an average higher student debt than most states, and it's not a great jobs market. I think that public education has been underfunded my entire lifetime, and especially public higher education. If you go to the state universities or the community college, you shouldn't be coming out of those with any debt at all. Certainly not with 5 figures of debt that you're going to drag through the next 2-3 decades of your life. Maybe never finish paying off your student debt. Who wrote those laws that even if you declare bankruptcy, you can't get out from under that debt?
I wish I knew.
Representatives are not writing those laws.
So you mentioned like more municipal ownership. Are you familiar with municipal broadband, like city-owned internet?
I'm familiar with the concept. I'm sorry we don't have it in Maine, but boy, do we need broadband as a utility. Probably it would be at the state level here because there really are only 2 or maybe 3 municipalities that are big enough to do it on their own. But it's a great idea. When the pandemic hit and school was, in-person school was canceled, of course, most school districts went to distance learning. My school district that's here, kind of up in the foothills of the White Mountains here, so many families didn't have access to the internet. So my school district actually purchased hotspots for the middle school and high school students who didn't have internet access. And they decided to just go with paper packets for the K-5 students. I would guess they may expand that in the future if they need to, but it's very iffy to get. There are certain towns in Maine that don't have any internet access at all by any method.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one, when you're amidst a pandemic, you kind of look for what little silver linings there might be. And one of them is like, well, hopefully, the earth kind of heals itself a little bit and we realize what we need to do about the climate. And then another one is we're realizing that the internet is a utility in our lives and it needs to be designated as such. And I know that, there's a lot of municipal broadband projects happening in Massachusetts because Charlemont got it and now Cambridge wants it and now Cape Cod wants it and that's spreading there. So yeah, when you said like city owned, like more municipally owned things, I mean, that's one of the things I'm a big proponent for. Like I'm trying to get municipal broadband in my community where I live. I've gone to like a city hall or a city council meeting and stuff to try to push for it. So it is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. So amidst the pandemic, how has that changed? I mean, beyond just the obvious that you can't physically go door to door or anything like that, how has it really changed the nature of your campaign?
It's an interesting question because some of the things have actually been advantageous. I was spending a great deal of time in the car traveling around. My husband was driving, and I don't do that anymore. So that is a lot of time that I have back to work. And also the reduction of my duties as a reading interventionist, happened, and that gave me more time to spend on the campaign. Most of the people on my campaign team are younger than I am and pretty, adept at using technology platforms. I think I've had to learn a new app a week in this campaign, which is fine. But our campaign mostly has been using Zoom. So instead of doing a house party where I used to, my husband would drive for 2 hours, maybe longer, to someone's home. We'd usually spend the night because it was so far from our home, and meeting with people and talking with them. Now we do it on Zoom, and probably most people are sitting around in their underwear, but they look fine from the chest up. And it's not the same as getting together face to face. Certainly, you can't hug people or shake their hand, but you can still look them in the eye. You can still hear your voice. You can still have a conversation. And one of the things that we have coming up soon is we're going to have an art auction on Zoom. So many of my supporters are artists. Maine is a big state for the arts, especially visual arts. And before the pandemic, I had the idea, I should have an art auction at some point as a fundraiser. I've shelved it when the pandemic came along, but then a friend of mine had a show installed in a big gallery in Portland, and the pandemic shut it down. They never even had the opening. So the gallery owner organized a Zoom art opening for her, and I attended it. And I saw what could be done on Zoom in terms of showing art and getting together as a group. So I realized, hey, we could do an art auction on Zoom. So actually today we just formally, launched our mini website for it. It's happening. The bidding starts May 18th, and the actual live event will be May 21st. We have a auctioneer who's very good at it and very funny and entertaining to help, and a lot of good art on offer. So if people are interested, they can go to lisaformaine.art. I love that URL.
Oh,
and
cool.
And look at the work.
I didn't even know that was an option.
What, ART? Neither did I.
Yeah, I did. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
You really do have a tech savvy staff. That's pretty impressive.
I do.
I didn't know that was a thing. Brilliant. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. And for everybody who wants to learn more, lisaformaine.org. Are there any parting words you'd like to leave everybody with?
We're in it to win it. Do we want to move the conversation left? Of course we do. But under ranked choice voting, we actually have a shot at putting the first Green candidate in the Senate. And we are going to do our best to make that happen. So I want to thank all the people that are part of this team and have supported us to this point. You've been amazing. And, let's win this thing.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. Best wishes to you. And for everybody watching and listening, lisaformaine.org. Lisa, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ron. That was great.
Cheers. Peace. All right. That's Lisa Savage, lisaformaine.org. She's running for the Senate up in Maine. Got some cool ideas. Jackass Whiskey and Pinto Beans. You said Tara Reid. If there's some news today concerning Tara Reid, I'm not aware of it. I haven't seen anything this morning, but I believe her. That's all I have to say about that. Tara Reid, I believe her. That's my initial reaction. If something happened this morning, I don't know about it. But so if there's a news update you're referring to, I'm not aware of what it is. Anthony, what's up, buddy? Abolish entire Homeland Security. It's redundant, says Anthony. Jackass Whiskey and Pinto Beans. Anthony, thank you very much for your super chat contributions. Guys, thank you for being here. Thanks again to Lisa Savage. That's lisaformaine.org. Our guest today. She's running for Senate. Check her out. And you know the drill in the meantime. Lucy is chilling right on the keyboard. Because she's comfortable. Guys, that's our show for today. You know the drill in the meantime. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.